Okay, welcome back. Hope you had a nice lunch. And thinking about hot stuff, notice a seamless link there. Our next slot is on local government and the role specifically of health and wellbeing boards. Now, if you're not ready for the restructuring of commissioning from April 1st next year, I fear for your future, because that invariably means you're not ready for the new role that local government will have to play from April the 1st next year. Not only will you have a new customer to deal with, but you'll have a new culture. Don't forget that in local government, local democracy is at work. And we have elected officials who will get involved in the business of healthcare. So beware. So let me introduce our next speaker then, Andrew Koza, CB for his work in social policy, social work. Previously at the Local Government Association, which I think should be on your corporate agenda as a new national influencing centre, and Andrew's gone his own way now and is social care and health policy analyst. So please welcome Andrew. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Rose. That truly is a first for me to be introduced by hot stuff by Donna Summer. I shall dine out on that at dinner parties the next 6 months. I could have chosen songs that might have been more appropriate. Maybe I can get you to reflect on that during the course of during my session. My brief is to answer the question, local government, friend or foe, and I'll answer my question immediately, and then you can reflect during the course of my presentation on whether I've sort of prepared you for this definition. I would say local government, as your chair suggests, is a friend you've yet to meet, I think, in most instances. But it's also a neighbour that you'll get the wrong side of at your peril. A neighbour that can be over-preoccupied with the positioning of fences, and a neighbour that actually is after some of your land, in the worst-case scenario. As you heard before, my background is primarily in local government, although I've spent 30 years working on the boundaries of local government and the NHS. And indeed, I was looking at the exhibition outside and seeing Richard Dole's work on smoking in the early days. And I was one of the very first intake into the college that he became master of, what's now Green Templeton College in Oxford, which brought social workers and doctors together for the first time. I was part of that intake, and I have to say it's always affected the way that I've seen the world. I'm also Associate Fellow at the King's Fund and spend a lot of time now doing work on integration, how to bring health and social care together. And I suppose the key thing to say is that involvement in health is not new for local government. Local government was responsible for large parts of the health service before the creation of the NHS, and indeed as recently as the 1970s, the public health function and other functions, including district nursing, was in local government. So local government, in some respects, is returning to a role that it's had for many years. Now, on these occasions, I usually do a quick poll of knowledge of local government, and I'm going to do it anyway, but I do know the answer before I do it. Does anybody work in local government in this audience? Right. Has anybody ever worked in local government? Hurrah. Okay, you can judge me. Does anybody feel their job now involves them working with local government? Okay. Well, there'll be a few more hands go up, I hope, by the end of my presentation, because local government is something you certainly need to understand more about. Excuse me, the three of you who have worked in local government, if I just give a very brief outline of how local government is organised in England. One of the things I also do is I'm chair of the Carers Trust, which is the largest charity that provides services for carers, the merger of Princess Royal Trust for Carers and Crossroads Care. And one of the fascinating things about that job is working with the 4 nations, which are going in very different directions on many of these issues. I'm going to focus on the English experience, but in Scotland, health and social care partnerships are being made statutory with a legal force. In Northern Ireland, of course, there's been many years of an integrated health and social care system. And in Wales, there's a strong emphasis on partnership, but there's also a very strong emphasis on public services in social care. So there are about 450 significant councils in England, of which 150 are top-tier councils. The majority of councils are at district level, which are the councils that you see in county council areas, and those councils are relatively small organisations responsible for local planning, housing, leisure and related issues. In areas where there are not county councils, there are councils that are described as unitary councils, also known in London as London boroughs or metropolitan boroughs in those, in particularly the northern areas. Those, and there are also some cities that have gained unitary status more recently from counties. Those councils are all-purpose councils, and they contain all the functions of a district council, but also of a top-tier authority. Michael Heseltine, in his recent report on stimulating the economy, is pushing hard for all councils to be unitary councils, or at least to see the merger of district councils to create greater entities. Your focus, I suggest, is on the 150 or so top-tier councils. Those are the councils that have responsibility for education, for what was previously social services, now children's services and adult social care. And they also have strategic responsibilities, including responsibilities for public health, which is one of the issues I'm going to talk to you about today. So in my presentation, I'm going to tell you about the new responsibilities of local government in relation to health. I'm going to talk about the new partnership arrangements that local government will need to have, and these will relate to you in different ways, or be something that you'll need to watch. I'm going to describe the challenges that have always been around in the relationship between health and social care and the various partners in and with the health service. But I'm not going to spend too much time on those because I suspect they're fairly familiar to you. But I also want to emphasise and finish on the new opportunities that exist from a greater role for local government. Excuse me, I have the tail end of a cold. So, the Health and Social Care Act, as is the much contested Health and Social Care Act, the changes so big they could be seen from space, according to David Nicholson in evidence to a select committee, created new responsibilities for local government, in particular the transfer of the public health function from the primary care trusts, which as you know are being abolished, to local government. Primary care trust functions are going in a number of directions, many to clinical commissioning groups, but these in particular and some others are coming across to top-tier local authorities. And with the Director of Public Health comes responsibilities for health promotion, which is almost entirely the responsibility of local government, although there are some issues that have been kept by the NHS Commissioning Board. I won't go into the detail of those. Responsibility transfers for health commissioning advice to commissioners, and that is advice on effective treatments and on whole population issues in relation to health planning. I'll come back to that. And part of the responsibility, the local responsibilities of the Primary Care Trust for health protection transfer across to local authorities, but local authorities are bound together with Public Health England, the new national organisation, in a joint arrangements for health protection, particularly in relation to epidemics and various other issues of that kind. With that responsibility comes primarily the staff and the contracts that are tied up in the PCT public health function. And it's been a very contested issue for local government, the amount of money that's transferring to local government for this new responsibility. This is partly because the emphasis, the spend on public health varied enormously from PCT to PCT across the country. I think there were 3 goes at trying to get a sensible sense of the amount that was spent on public health by the NHS that should be divided between Public Health England and local government, and each of the 3 exercises were deemed in different ways to be flawed. And there is a big problem about maintaining the status quo on the one hand, continuing to maintain the patterns of services and activities that make sense locally, and some degree of levelling up for those areas where there is not enough spent, because the responsibilities for the council will be the same whether you've got a decent transfer or not a transfer. And linked to that, you'll know, were suggestions around a health premium for the success of councils and the Director of Public Health in addressing health inequalities, reducing health inequalities. Director of Public Health, I think it's fair to say, had mixed views about the transfer to local government. I think many had called for bringing public health into local government because of the ability to address the wider determinants of poor health and health inequalities, and also to bring a whole population perspective, and also to influence all the services that councils provide directly and through contracts. Others were very worried about losing contact with the rest of the medical profession about career development and also about possible implications of different terms and conditions on transfer. So all of that must be in place by April 2013, and as I speak now, local government is not yet clear about its allocation for this new responsibility. We know what the least we'll get, we certainly don't know what it will be in every instance. The second major responsibility is the one that I think you probably need to focus quite a lot of attention on, and that is the what I describe as the new political system leadership for health and social care, or health and wider public services, that councils have got as a result of the responsibility to set up health and wellbeing boards. Health and wellbeing boards are one for each of the 150 authorities, 152 authorities at top tier, but they can cooperate and they can flex up and down to consider, for example, issues of specialism or sub-regional issues of that kind. But they're a statutory committee of the council, but they're unusual for a council committee because officers, as we call them, and elected members are both voting members on these. So they're quite unusual committees for local government. Because they're local government committees, they meet in public and all their papers are publicly available. So you should have no difficulty in accessing the membership and the early intentions of the health and wellbeing boards for the areas that you're interested in. The King's Fund have recently done a sort of state of preparedness study, which is worth a read of, in relation to health and wellbeing boards. I think it's fair to say they're still in the early stages of development. The law requires them to contain a senior politician, preferably the leader of the council. I didn't say in my introduction to local government that very few local government decisions are now made by committees, that most local government has a cabinet and a leader model, with a much smaller group of members, more akin to the cabinet of central government, and quite a few places now have elected mayors who have significant powers, and in these instances will be the chairs of the health and wellbeing boards. The boards, as well as having senior elected members, must also have the Director of Children's Services, the Director of Adult Services and the Director of Public Health as minimum membership. They must also have representatives of clinical commissioning groups, of Health Watch, but there's no requirement that provider interests of any kind are represented. Some have chosen to have Foundation Trust membership or other members as part of their boards. Many of them have set up provider forums or subgroups or thematic groups to bring a provider perspective to these issues. These are essentially strategic bodies. They're charged with drawing up a strategic needs assessment and, more importantly, a strategy. Councils have had a responsibility for quite a while with Directors of Public Health to put together the assessment, but the strategy is new. And the strategy is meant to set the framework for health and council commissioning for that area, matching needs and resources and looking at how services need to change to address those. In that sense, you have a considerable interest in the judgments that are being made about the adequacy of existing service patterns and activities, but also outcomes and the other evidence that should support these. In this respect, Directors of Public Health are pretty key because they bring that analytical capacity and that whole population perspective to play. And one of the key issues of tension for central government, for local government in relation to central government, is whether local priorities to address health inequalities will be given the same weight as national expectations in the mandate between the Secretary of State and the NHS Commissioning Board, or indeed the priorities of the Commissioning Board itself. We argued unsuccessfully as Local Government Association about the ability to refer back and challenge statutorily plans that didn't address these priorities. At the moment, there is a sort of ping-pong effect where they can be referred back, but we'll see how that actually works out in practice. Health and Wellbeing Boards and councils, as the conveners of them, can also comment in detail on the commissioning plans of the clinical commissioning groups and of the NHS Commissioning Board insofar as it affects local services. Typically, if you take children's services, there are 8 commissioners locally for those services. Local government, clinical commissioning group, the commissioning board itself, and other a wide range of other interests. Services are coming from a variety of different directions. So the commissioning board is both a referee to the system to a certain extent, in that it's authorising the clinical commissioning groups and holding them to account financially, but it is also itself a local commissioner for specialist services, some aspects of children's services, and some aspects of public health services. So it's quite a complex relationship, and one which will be overseen by senior politicians for the first time, certainly since the 1970s. The pattern of clinical commissioning groups is very varied across local government. I'm working in a number of places where it's not unusual to have only some within the boundaries of the local authority, others straddling 1, 2 or 3 other local authority areas, and for services to be provided to council areas from a variety of different providers located outside that area. The footprint for the Health and Wellbeing Board and for the strategy is the local authority boundary. But that is the only footprint that is, if you like, integrated or unified. Most other footprints, health planning and other purposes, including commissioning strategies, are on much wider and different footprints, and that offers challenges itself. So get to know your Health and Wellbeing Board. The route to them is as I say, they're publicly available documents, but the Director of Public Health is a good starting point for these conversations, as is often the Director of Adult Services, who in many places has got the lead responsibility for these issues. Some other new responsibilities that you need to be aware of. You'll know that the many iterations of public and patient involvement has now ended up, for the time being anyway, with Health Watch England at a national level and local Health Watch.